You know, I usually say that graphics aren't that important, but every so often I'm reminded that there are MMORPGs that have worlds that look like this. I feel like I should be able to feel a breeze and smell the trees. Graphics may not be everything, but it can definitely make a difference. The character models don't look too bad either. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a casual review, a series where I test and review popular games so you can decide if you want to try them out. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the popular Korean MMORPG Black Desert Online, or BDO, and see how it treats its new players. BDO is a huge game that has been around for a long time, so to be a little more specific, we're going to be taking a look at the newest expansion, The Land of the Morning Light. Hopefully we can review the entire game in pieces, but I figured since this expansion is the new and hot content coming to Black Desert Online, it would be best to start here. The Land of the Morning Light expansion just launched, and I'm happy to say that this video is sponsored by Pearl Abyss themselves, the developers behind Black Desert Online. They were gracious enough to reach out to me and let me review the expansion through the eyes of a new player to give my honest feedback for others that would be new to the game like me. So this video will be focused on the newly launched content, particularly because a new player can choose to start from level 1 in the Land of the Morning Light, so you don't have to go through all the older content to get there. Also, with the launch of the expansion, there will be season servers to help you get leveled and geared up quicker so you can hang with the big boys sooner. For those of you that have played Black Desert Online before, the Land of the Morning Light expansion starts to move away from the repetitive grinding that BDO is famous for in the past, and instead lets you choose different quest lines which culminate in distinct boss fights. At launch, there'll be 9 of these different bosses, and coming soon after will be a badass dragon fight. Each boss will have unique mechanics, and for even more of a focus on boss battles, there'll be a heavy emphasis on replayability with the Black Shrine system and public rankings and a time attack leaderboard. Along with these big features come revamped life skill activities, new food and recipes based on Korean cuisine, new housing and furniture, a new ship called the Panoxion, and more. All in this beautiful island environment that is still making my jaw drop. But enough with the promo talk. My expertise lies in the new player experience, so before I get into all of this cool new stuff, let's start with an overview of Black Desert Online as it is today in 2023. Black Desert Online is probably one of, if not the most well-known Korean MMO in the Western market today. In my eyes, it sort of set my bar for what we as Westerners think of the quintessential Korean MMO back in 2014. There's an emphasis on grindy gameplay and progression mechanics, lots of side activities to do that have nothing to do with the quote-unquote main game. The game has extremely, quote-unquote, realistic character models with a character creation feature that would put any single-player RPG to shame, and of course a bit of an addiction to pay-to-win or pay-for-convenience cash shops. Korean MMOs are very different from our Western MMOs, but they can be some of the most fun, addicting games ever made. Black Desert Online was originally all of this and more, but I have to say that since I've come back to the game for the casual review series, which was a bit before this new expansion, I felt that a lot of these things have changed. I'm not sure if this is because it's been in a Western market for so long, but things seem to be a bit different now. I know the main question on most people's minds is it still pay to win or pay for convenience? Well, yeah, but I think if you had to put the amount of pay to win on a 1 out of 10 scale, it's now a 4 instead of what it was before, which I would personally consider to have been an 8. Yes, there are definitely benefits to paying money, but there's nothing you need to buy, especially not as a casual or new player. And with the base game being so cheap or sometimes free, I don't really think too much of a cash shop with a bunch of random stuff to buy. But even though it's become a lot more westernized, BDO is still very much a true old-school Korean MMO. So far, as a new player in the new expansion, I've mainly experienced the questline PVE part of the game, and have been introduced through questing to different gathering skills, like this interactive fishing skill, where you actually have to complete the QuickTime event, which goes up in difficulty depending on the rarity of the fish. I hear you can turn this QuickTime event off and on in some way, but I kinda like it. It makes fishing a bit more exciting. But PvE is what I'm used to in MMOs, and in BDO, PvE definitely has its ups and downs. Character creation is actually pretty fun, because combat is crazy as hell, so no matter what class you choose, you're gonna have this epic, graphically impressive combat skills that have animations better than blockbuster Marvel movies. There are 26 different classes, all gender locked, but you can get around the gender lock by choosing the partner class. For example, the witch is female, but the wizard is male. The sorceress is female, but the sage is male. The ninja is male, but the kunoichi is female. You get the idea. Each of these classes has strengths and weaknesses, but as you'll find out, most of the game can be played completely solo, so unless you're getting into the PvP scene, you don't need to worry about strengths and weaknesses too much. Also, each class has an awakening, which adds new skills and abilities to their fighting style, and a succession, which empowers their current abilities. You can unlock both at level 56, but can only use one at a time. I chose the Megu class to test the expansion with because the Megu is part of this new content wave. She also has this dragon dog-like creature that appears sometimes, and I love dogs, so yes. Alright, so after you create your character and start in or arrive at the land of the morning light, you immediately get whisked away on a story quest. Technically, you can choose to complete this at any time, but I decided to see where it would take me. I won't spoil any of the story, but the first questline I completed was based off old Korean folklore, and at the end of it, I had to make a choice which ultimately decided how I was going to fight the final boss. The story was pretty good, and it definitely helps that you're running around in one of the most gorgeous MMO environments I've ever seen. But I will say that I was expecting a bit more combat. The questline was pretty long, and it required me to complete a lot of different tasks, but I think there were only 2 combat encounters in this entire questline. The rest of the quests were travel here, talk to this person, travel to this town and talk to these 3 people, find these items and bring them to me. It does help that the quest markers are very in your face, so I never felt lost. There's also an auto run feature for both you and your horse, which will take you to the next quest objective without any brain power and in no time at all. My favorite part of the questline though was the voice acting. There was so much dialogue to listen to in all of these talk to this person quests, but I listened to most of them. And it wasn't really because I liked what they were saying or it was super interesting all the time. It was mostly because the English voice actors sound like the most American actors of all time. Some of the NPCs sounded like a normal American girl. This guy had a southern or Midwest accent, and the turtle people. Oh my god. The turtle people were not only crazy because they are literally cartoon-looking turtles, but they have the Southern California surfer accent, and whoever localized this dialogue and the actors that performed it are brilliant.
I see why you're so revered now, oh wise Mr. Turt. Well played. What do you demand? My liver's not worth the salt you'll put on it.
Yeah, they always mention the liver, Turt. Nope. There's something else I require. It's spawning season, and fish are most bountiful, Turt. If you'd bring some abalone and a few crunchy sea coral.
I love when games don't take themselves too seriously, and listening to this kind of made my day. So overall, the questline was fun to do and the story wasn't half bad, but I still wish there had been more combat. I came into BDO hearing so much about the action combat, how it's the best combat in the entire MMO genre, but I haven't really had to fight anything so far. The boss encounter was fun, but it didn't last very long, and it was at the very end of the questline. But luckily, Perlabyss did give me access to some characters to test out the bosses that are coming with the new expansion. This is a feature called the Black Shrine, and it allows you to fight any of the bosses you've unlocked through completing the main story quest. There are currently 9 of them, one for each of the new quest lines, and they are tough. Or at least, I assume they are. I don't know, my character was programmed to not take damage, and somehow on this one boss fight, I still died. Just kidding, I know why I died here. It's because I'm terrible at video games and couldn't figure out the one-shot mechanic within the 3 minutes he gave me. But these fights are designed to be difficult, with different combat mechanics and one-shot abilities. As you go up in difficulty level, more mechanics and abilities are added to the encounter, and this is probably as close to raid bosses as you'll get in BDO. Go to this screen, select one of the bosses you have unlocked, select a difficulty, and defeat the encounter for some awesome rewards. Simple, yet awesome. I tried them all, and one thing I noticed was that even though I couldn't take damage, I could see the attack lines on the floor, and my MMO veteran brain was constantly saying, yeah, I would have definitely died there. I think the best part of these boss fights, though, is just the spectacle of it. Each boss encounter has its own distinct arena with its own music, and obviously the bosses have lore to them based on the main story quests you did to unlock them. Perlabyss definitely did a good job making you feel like you're fighting some huge unmanageable threat. As for the combat system itself, it's probably one of the most exciting clusterfucks of a system I have ever had the pleasure of being bad at. Action combat is always fun because you feel like you're interacting with your character more, as opposed to tab targeting combat where in some games you can end up standing and hitting a lot. Both have their merits, but BDO takes action combat to the next level. There are combos you can use to optimize damage, there are combos to deal medium damage while maintaining your mobility, and my character had like 3 different ways to dodge, which was awesome. My piss poor skill level made the combat look like trash, but if you look at trailers for BDO, the combos look much prettier. Also, this is one of those combat systems that just gets more and more satisfying as you practice and get better at it. I guarantee you that if I had leveled up and learned these skills as I got them, I would have been much more aware of how to play my character and how these combos work. The combat is probably the #1 thing that is driving my need to keep playing this game. Not only do I hate being bad at things, but I love how flashy all of this is, and the easy to learn, hard to master concept is motivating me to keep coming back and learn how to not button smash. Safe to say, I think the combat system owns up to its reputation. So lastly, I want to talk about the new player experience in general. How does BDO help new players get into the game and understand all of this massive content? It doesn't. I will say that the base game is explained pretty well. You're shown how to gather, how to make things. You're shown around the town where you would need different NPCs, such as buying a new boat. You're slowly taught the combat system through enemy scaling, so you never feel like you're unable to complete something from a lack of gear. The gear is kind of only necessary once you get to endgame activities. In my opinion, the biggest problem a new player will face is the sheer amount of content that BDO has to offer. It is simply overwhelming. This video doesn't even begin to scratch the surface. I only talked about the new questlines in PvE, combat and bossing, and the beautiful world that I can't stop gushing about. I mentioned some other things like the crafting and life skills feature, but there is so much to say about them that I wouldn't have time in this video to go into them. For example, I'm just going to list a couple of things here. BDO has an in-depth player housing mechanic, a boating and sailing mechanic, an infinite gear and level progression system, some of the best PvP of any MMO, a constant rotation of seasonal in-game events, world bosses that can take 100 people to defeat, a fashion system, a mount system, a guild system. There's a million different currencies and a huge spread out world to explore. I could keep going, but I think you get the idea. My main point is that all of this would be extremely overwhelming to any new player who's coming into BDO right now. Plenty of games have this problem. World of Warcraft and Path of Exile, two of my favorite games of all time, are currently having a hard time educating new players without wikis and community-made guides and other content. I think any new player coming into BDO would definitely need to do the same and look up content outside the game for help. That being said, if you sort of close your eyes to all the notifications and all the HUD options that you see on your screen and take the game one step at a time, it's actually not that daunting. Individually, each of these mechanics is entirely manageable, and the game does a great job at scaling to your skill level. I think the best indication of how helpful the game is to new players is that most things can be completed entirely on your own. If you wanted to, you could play BDO entirely solo. There would be things that would be extremely difficult, but you could do it. And because you can do everything on your own, there is no pressure to play at a certain skill level if you don't want to spend the time to practice your abilities or upgrade your gear. From what I can tell, there is no pressure to play socially, but you are rewarded in small ways for doing so. So whether you have a guild full of players or a group of friends, you can play and complete the same content. Now that being said, there are no traditional endgame dungeons or raids, so group content seems to be what you make of it. Black Desert Online is a sandbox MMO really, which means that you can do whatever you want whenever you want. It doesn't push you towards certain endgame goals like raiding or dungeon diving. To be honest, it doesn't have a true endgame. It gives you a bunch of options and allows you to choose which features you want to engage in. And for new players, that can be a bit overwhelming if you don't know what the options are or how to start them. But I should save that conversation for another video. For now, it's time for me to end this expansion review. Black Desert Online has been a staple in the MMO community for so long now, it's hard to imagine just how much content the game has to offer. But if you decide you want to try out the game, start with the new expansion, Land of the Morning Light, and it will ease you into the rest of the game. The combat is probably the highlight for me, but it's the quality of the rest of the systems that fill out the world and keep the BDO community strong. Complicated yet engaging progression systems, easy to learn, hard to master mechanics, and a strong visual style that keeps the world fresh and fun to look at, Black Desert Online is definitely one of the best sandbox Korean MMOs in the market today, and I can definitely see why the game has continued to have a strong community almost 10 years later. But most importantly, I hope you enjoyed this video. This was a fun one for me to do since I did feel special getting early access to the expansion. I really appreciate all of you for watching this video, and if you want to try out the game, you can use my link in the description to download the BDO launcher that's not through Steam. Coming soon is a Wolcen review. I finally finished that game and want to see what you all think of it. Leave a like if you liked the video and subscribe for more content. I hope you enjoy your adventures in the Land of the Morning Light, and I can't wait to see what we talk about next.
Thank you.